Michael the Mechanical here with a little bit of an update video thingy. Just so you know, I am tired, I'm exhausted. I don't have a camera anymore other than my phones, and I don't really have a way to set them up, and I don't like handling things with greasy, grubby hands. Anyway, I've been putting together another gearbox, and I have a mess. As always, it's horrible to have messes. Organised chaos, I guess you could call it. And I had to buy this unit here so I could build the gearbox at home, because I don't want to be going to other people's places to use their equipment. Now, there's a lot of things we can learn from looking at a gearbox, especially the cluster shaft, I believe it's called, or maybe it is the other shaft. I have no idea. There's one called counter shaft, and then one. Oh, that's the counter shaft over there, and I think this is the cluster shaft because it's the one that's got all the gears on it. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, so don't quote me on that. Anyway, so what's going on is that we had to put in that bearing at the top, and all the bearings have been very, very loose. So we've made them press fittable, and we're using a 906 Loctite compound to help hold them in place so they don't move, essentially. So the problem is, if the bearing retainers move, then what we end up having is play in the cluster shaft and play in all the shafts that essentially will result in weird noises, abnormal things, unexpected things, and then you'll have problems with your car. That won't make sense. Things won't be running correctly and things will be noisy for no freaking reason. There'll be no consistency because it might be tight one moment and the next it's loose. Things won't have the correct friction, and you could break a tooth in the gearbox if there's too much load on one point. The idea behind having things tight, just right, tight, is that if you have too much load on one corner of the tooth, you're going to crack it, chip it, break the whole tooth off. It'll create a weak spot in the structure there. So you use the full surface area friction to make things work. Now, I don't have to clean everything perfectly with a manual gearbox. Like, the outside of this was a pain in the butt to clean. I used a pressure washer, but that's all like clay or stuff. So it's a lot of work to try and clean that stuff off. You have to work your butt off, and I'm not going to get that kind of value out of the car or this, so there's no point in me doing the outside. However, I do the best I can for the inside. We have a new input shaft out for the gearbox here, because the old one is, well, over on the bench with the bearing on it, and this is what happens to every single one of them. They wear out here where the bearing goes, and that's because bearing failure. And when they spin, that's when you have issues with things failing. Now, if I look in this hole, I don't know if you can see, but there are some little pin marks in the hole where I've hit it with a hammer and a punch. So I center punched all the bearing holes, because if I put this together and everything's loose, nothing will stay together. If I put it together with that and even Loctite it, the pressure I put on there initially should retain for a long time, and it shouldn't. The retainers should not slide at all. And if they do slide, well, that voids the warranty, I guess. You know, there's no guarantee it's going to last forever at that point. It will last a lot longer if the retainers stay in the right positions. The thing about the thrust from helical cut gears, because there's spur or straight cut gears, which are essentially parallel teeth. They're noisy as anything. But then you have the helical cut gears, which the machines that cut them normally have a feed rate in which the piece of material spins as the cutter is going, and the cutter goes at a certain speed as well. That's one way they cut them, or the other way they cut them is they just go on an angle with the tool, and then they go in like this and just spin it and cut it like that on a dial indicator head. A dividing head, pardon me. And we do have a dividing head. I don't know actually where it's actually gone. I'm pretty sure it was in my area because I paid for the thing, and I offered it up as collateral to my parents, but then I won, so I paid off my dues to my parents at the time, so it's mine. I don't actually see a dividing head. We do have a dividing head. Just, it's interesting. Oh, there it is. Found it. That's the dividing head. No. This here is a dividing head with the 3-jaw chuck, and they just put this on an angle, and then the cutter goes in and out with the bench. So that would sit on a bench on an angle. The dividing head would go so many degrees or so many teeth or whatever, blah blah blah, and it'll do its job that it needs to do. So this bearing is finally in. I ended up using a car jack under the frame and holding the shaft up, because if you put it together incorrectly, the keyways won't line up and then you'll have some issues. I actually don't know if this is fully together correctly yet, but eventually I'll find out. It's all a bit loose and it's still going together. I'm tired, I'm exhausted. I still want to push on and see how much more I can do today, and then relax maybe tomorrow, I guess. Probably can do a lot more if I want to. But today was a bit stressful, and that's what it is. I'm working 6 days a week now, everyone, and I'm getting paid for it, but considering getting rid of the 6th day and going back to 5 days just because I would rather find another job for the other 2 days, meaning I would be working 7 days. It's just the catch-20 with what happened today was like, I wasn't offered any professional courtesy. I know what I'm doing, and when you have an argument with someone over the way you're writing something for no reason, and you don't even have to say anything. You're saying is, this is the way I'm doing it, and then they crack the shits and tell you, you haven't got permission. As the moment you start responding, that is when it starts hurting you. And the way you have to do it is you have to completely ignore them, regardless if they're supervisor or not. You have to put yourself in the situation where you're right. I am writing it. Oh, you were told to write with pen and paper, it wouldn't take that long. I'm faster on the computer. I'll do it in Excel. Then I'll copy that and I'll change the format size or font or whatever to make it clear and consistent what I've written. If I write it on pen and paper, you know how many times people have misread what I've written? Gosh. Or when someone else has misread something else someone else has written. People confuse my 5s for S's for some reason, but that's when you're writing really super fast and you have to get shit done, and you realise that there's a number set. So people confuse my 5s for S's. And so they start criticising you. Oh, so you can't write, can you? Oh my freaking god. If you say, yeah, I can write, I should have been dumb and said, no, I can't write, and that's why I'm using the computer, mate. Should have done that for fun. At the end of the day, there was a professional level that I was going with, and if someone's going to treat me like I'm not worth doing the work the way I want to do it, and I have to do it a specific way, and I get micromanaged, not acceptable. That is not a work culture I'm happy with. It's not what I want to be a part of. Not to mention, this is one of the lower paying jobs. There are better paying jobs out there. I could be earning way more than what I'm getting now. And if I'm going to get treated like shit, or not given professional courtesy, then why should I stay on the freaking shift? I'll just find a job somewhere else and get like, what, $60 an hour. I've already said to my actual employer that I'm looking to earn $1,600 plus a week. That's what I want to earn per week, because that would mean I can reach the goals I intend to reach in an achievable time frame and manner that suits me and my lifestyle that I would rather have. And then once you have nothing that you need, then you can settle for less in some cases, unless your living expenses are crazy high. But the great thing about me is I can bring my, depending if I have land or not, and depending on what I have, I can bring my living expenses down to nothing. And that's because I'm not really silly. See, I've learned a lot from where I live and my experiences. This place is a mess, so it's hard to work with, and it's also not my property, so it's not my business to change anything. I know this here works. Look at those plants right there. This system here works, but it's got lots of flaws. And because someone else has done it, and it's in the family, and I've been a part of it to some extent, I can see the ups and the downs. These should really be in like a greenhouse, and then you can grow them better that way. But from the weather we've been getting recently, I would change the materials that I'd be building with, because glass has been getting smashed, and then you have the glass in the water, you have the glass in the plants or the ground, and you have to clean it up, which is a nightmare. ideally you go with something maybe tempered or plastic, or something that can deflect, that has the room and leniency to flex a little bit. Yeah, it's a tricky one to decide what your materials would be until you know what the availability of materials for those sort of projects would be. Then you have to worry about, the wing. What can tolerate the wing? What's going to get ripped off? What's not going to get ripped off? How do you engineer these things? You also have to figure out your area constraints, like how much land you have, the availability to utilize. There's just so many different factors to consider when thinking about a project like that. And then if you want to kill your power costs, you do need to have batteries. You do need to figure out what you can handle, putting on the batteries, what you can't put on the batteries, because you put everything on the batteries, you'll drain the batteries, and then every appliance in the household or whatever is going to drain power from the grid. And that's when you'll be at your peak usage. And if you do it at the wrong time, it's going to hurt. Do it at the right time, it's going to be fine. You want to be using your power during the times when the price is the highest, because then that will reduce how much it costs. But at the same time, you want to try and put your batteries, hook them up to the most important things you have in your household, like your fridge, your freezer. Okay, they are important because if you have a power outage, things go off in there. Then you also have this sort of system, which is ideally what you want to also semi-hook up your batteries to. And the reason I say semi is if the power goes off, you need a way to quickly turn it back on again, because if that stays off too long, they will get sick and they will die. The fish in the pot, that is. So there's just so many variables to consider when you start a new project, or when you start considering different things. You need the correct amount of solar, you need the correct amount of capacity to fit your daily lifestyle. Then, in order to offset the repair costs, you need to find a supplier who can take the power off your hands at a good rate that you can then fill back into your pocket, and then with that, offset it against the costs of repairs in the future. So you put that money into your savings and let it save up. So not only are you getting paid money, you end up putting that from your pocket into your savings, and then voila, you start building a passive savings. Because for every $100,000, I think it was, you could be making, $6K per year from that, just from savings from doing nothing. $6K per year is pretty good money if you can do that. And then when you really need it, boom, you can pull something out if you have to. The only thing is that it does affect how much money you start saving. You have to wait a whole year or something before it starts going back to normal rates that you'd be saving at. Anyway, I do need to let you guys go, and I need to let myself go. I'm tired, I'm exhausted, but I've got to press on. As you can see, I am building a gearbox, okay? I'm doing this. I got all my parts. That's $1,000 of kit right there, and including that thing. The shaft itself was about $200-300 just for that piece, and had to send the first one back. I'm not sure if there was anything else I needed to buy for this. I think I bought everything I needed at the time. And then I've got my sealants. That's for, additionally for the sump gasket. That is for the threads for when we do the opposite side, which holds these bolts in place, or holds those plates in place. We've got extra cans of this stuff. It all costs a lot of money to do these sort of projects. Then I've got everything I'm pretty sure I will need to do the trans suspension. But I'm not worried about torsion bars. Torsion bars, I'm not even going to worry about. It's an extra cost that I might not need to worry about. I can then offset it in the future if I do need torsion bars. If I need torsion bars, oh shit. Get them later. And if I have to get torsion bars, I might as well upgrade the shockers at the same time, because I only paid $8 for my shockers, so I can afford to basically say, look, I only paid $8 for my shockers in my car. I can go the extra mile and buy, a few shockers that are worth like $100 each, the foam cell ones. But anyway, that's just the front shockers. I'm going to let you guys go now. Thanks for your time. And have a great day, wherever you are. Look after your car. Try to do the jobs right. Buy the book. Buy the manual. The manual doesn't help you in all cases. No joke. I do use manuals when I do this stuff most of the time. But these manuals are helpful to a certain extent. there is one thing left that I could do before I go to give you a bit of a lesson, just in case. If you're wondering, how do I figure out how all these parts all go together with their correct assemblies if they're all scattered about? It's all about matching up the pairs. So ideally this one here went to the reverse gear, which is that bottom one there, that's reverse. And then this one here, I believe, is fifth. So first and fifth gear are paired to the same synchro set. And that's how that works, because you've got your smallest gear here and then your biggest gear here, that's for reverse. Then you've got all your other gears, and the same sort of thing applies. And it's very tricky at times to figure out which ones go where and which way they'll go, because the manual doesn't tell you the directions they go. The idea is you have pictures maybe of these to tell you which way they were actually installed, which way they were meant to go. But what you do is you look at the surfaces, the friction surfaces, and you work out, when you put it sort of together with the other gear, which way does this most suit before you have any shiny marks. If you see shiny marks, it's probably paired wrong. If you don't see any shiny marks and it's just like looks normal, then you probably got the right set. And that's how you know which direction things normally go in. And that's how I did it. I'll be honest also, some of these gear teeth will be a little bit chipped because of how I had to pull it apart and I use a screwdriver and it cracked some of the teeth. That's one of the things I worried about. But it's only about 1 to 5% of the tooth. So I've still got 95% of the tooth, and that's all that really gets used anyway of the surface area. So anyway, that's it. Thank you very much for watching and sticking around. I'm sorry I don't do videos anymore, but I've got a busted camera and I'm trying to do other things and worry about other things. Cars cost money. Cars cost a lot of money, and at the end of the day, these sort of videos aren't viable, and it is a bit of a problem. Because if I need to get a new camera, that means I have to buy a new one. If I use my phone and I break it, then I have to buy a new phone, and it's a high risk because this device can easily be broken. Then with cars, you stuff up, it costs you money, and if you have no money, you can't fix it and you can't go back. I can afford a lot more now than I could yesterday. I've also made a lot of mistakes, and I've still been able to get by without panicking about things. The thing I want to do at the end of the day is get my own place, take my stuff away, and then, rebuild there whatever I can do. And if these videos were viable, then I'd be doing it sort of as a part of a business, because it's viable in that sense. But it's not viable at all, because to me, the way these videos work is you put a lot in the sense of, you don't have much work, you don't have enough money. At the time I didn't. And then you don't get much out. It's all about reaching the correct target market for your content, your productions, and not everyone's interested in a 4056T. That's all I do, is 4056T. I could do the 6G72, but that whole car isn't really worth it. I could do anything. But then there's the other catch-20 of, in the next 10 years, we are going to potentially lose a lot of these old cars. And they're not going to be allowed to run on the roads. They're probably not even going to supply fuel. It's going to be ridiculously expensive. We're going to be changing to hydroelectric cars and electric cars and hybrids. There will not be many petrol cars allowed to be on the road anymore. They will phase them out from the oldest models to the newest models. That's exactly what they will do, because if they try to phase them out like all at once, bang like that, it won't work, because people have modern day spent money on cars that they expect to go for like 10, 20, 30 years. These old cars have already did this like 60, 70 years, probably even more than that at that point. And then it's going to be one of those things where that car was allowed to be on the road for 70 years. Why can't mine? Mine's newer, it's moderner, it's got less cylinders, it puts out less pollution, I look after it, and blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, once the fuel reserves are gone, they're gone. We've got plenty of them in the world still. People don't admit that, but there's only pockets of it here and there, and at the end of the day, we need to be changing to a more environmentally economic solution. We can't be using hydrocarbons to power our cars anymore. It's time to move forward. Hydroelectric and electric are the solutions. Take care, everyone. Michael out.